Moore's Order Roundtable. My name is Tarik. We're dealing with some issues dealing with protecting the Moorish birthright and fundamental principles on how you're going to file a suit. We'll discuss many matters and points of interest and points of necessary information that some of you already know, and some points of information that some of you may not have known, but they're all vital in point. Then we're going to give you some history. We're going to give you some jurisprudence under which law comes, and give you some points of self-responsibility relative to these matters for your personal self as well as for the nation at large and your children. And so these matters that we're going to be discussing will be inclusive or relative to the point of protecting your Moorish birthright. And I recognize that a lot of people have concepts, pro and con, concerning the Moorish movement, many of them correct and positive, and many of them incorrect and misleading. So one of the things that we want to do is clear up concepts about a lot of issues. And I also want to apologize to everyone here because there was some misinformation that went out earlier that the meeting was canceled, which you see a lot of people from all over who were coming were under the impression that we had canceled. We did not. All right? So the place would have been packed. But it is just as well, you just take the information back with you in your territories and areas. After we discuss these matters, we'll have a question and answer session. I would also suggest that if you have paper and pen, take notes. Because some things you'll understand, some things you'll probably have questions on, but like anything else, everything can't be taught like at a meeting necessarily. It's not designed that way. These meetings are designed to inspire you to be self-responsible, to do some research, to do some cross-reference, and to free your mind from misconcepts or things that you may have thought were. And we're going to give you some keys of information to expose the fact that a lot of your concepts are wrong. We're not challenging your concepts. We're giving you certain information to free your own mind so you can recognize it for yourself. The other deal is that we want everybody to understand that the Moorish Divine National Movement is your movement. It's not something that we're talking about trying to get you interested in. What we're trying to make you see for yourself is that it already belongs to you. And because of misinformation over the decades, most people have a misconception of this movement because so much effort was made or put forth to suppress it or to create misunderstanding. Also, when people get the information or get certain concepts of the information, they don't know how to use it. So we're going to work in a lot of those areas. And when you feel there's something that you don't understand, come up here. Don't worry about what the question is. You ask it. Because if you don't ask questions, guess what? Nothing gets solved. And remember this. The only reason why some of these problems exist economically, socially, politically, and spiritually is because sorcerers have been at work. If you would tell people from the door that they've been under influence of sorcerers, they think you're talking Star Wars or some kind of Harry Potter thing. But that's the real fact. And so most of the times you don't come to the people and come from that angle because you know they can't handle it. They get spooked up. They think you're trying to sell them some kind of religion, etc., etc. And of course, they don't believe that that's in effect. Well, it is in effect. That's how you became known as Negroes and Africans. We're going to knock off those things in a minute, too. So before we get into some points, I want to make these very important points and issues. The heart of what we're talking about tonight is protecting the Moorish birthrights and the fundamental principles of suits. What a suit is, how you should proceed in it, etc., etc., etc. That's why I want you to take notes, because everything in those points we won't be able to go over again, but we'll go over the important parts, so get that in your heads. In the future, others will be here on a regular basis who will be teaching points of protecting your birthrights. And over a period of time, some of the things we're going to put in the paper. As a matter of fact, the editor-in-chief, Brother Abdullah, was suggesting to me to do with that before. It was just that we have so much stuff to deal with, so much stuff to put out, back stuff, that we can't do it all in one time, but we intend to get as much out as we can We're also going to reissue the Moorish civil letter, which we had used before, and because we were so tied up with other issues, we didn't have time to work on the paper and that, but we're going to put it out because we have to get that information out because there's so few people that are willing to, how do you say, put their neck on the line and tell it like it is, because so many people are bought off already and compromised. And we also want to influence you, for the sake of the children and the nation, to have the courage to speak some of those truths along the same line, because that's what's going to get you out of this mess. Unless we're going to be willing to deal with truth, we're not getting out of this mess. Now I want to make one issue, one point, and I'm going to bring it to a point of law, jurisprudence, and share with you this, and you think on it, and if anyone has any questions, ask or talk about it later. Now, Noble Drew Ali, Sheikh Sharif Abdul Ali, established the Moorish Divine and National Movement in North America, really around 1911, 1912, and officially active 1913. A lot of preliminary work was going on before the movement was initially, or what you call officially, established. So whereas people look at it as the movement starting in 1913, that's the official date of what you say official activity. But the business was going on for quite some time. One of the things I want you to pay attention to, and we're not going to go over all those points today, but I want you to look into for yourself, because that's not the subject matter, but I want to throw this out there. Look at the timeline. When Drew Ali established the Moorish Divine National Movement in 1913, all right, on the other side of the government, they met and they established the Internal Revenue Service. Yes, Federal Reserve System. Now, when Drew Ali was doing his work and about to establish this movement officially, Woodrow Wilson had got his degree at Johns Hopkins University, his PhD, and he was being, at that time, courted for the election to the presidency of the United States Republic. Now, during the Wilson administration, to counter Noble Drew Ali, and you must really understand this so you can understand a lot of activities that are going on with a lot of different groups. The point of this mission is the enforcement of our Constitution. Most people's misunderstanding is thinking that the Constitution for the Republic, United States, North America, was established by the European sons or the knights. Not true. The number is 35 and 20. 35 Moors, 20 European sons, in agreement to stop centuries and centuries of wars between the Moors and the Roman nations. And when we say the Roman nations means the European nations collectively, not just Rome the city. Now, we've had wars since the Punic Wars on up to the Battle of the Crusades, right on up to the Battle of Poitiers near Tours, France, right on up to the French Revolution and the North American, which they say the American Revolution, but it's North American Revolution. They're all tied together. If you don't know that now. It is the longest revolution in the world. You fell, that's how you became niggers. That's where your slavery really came from. Fact is, that part of history is not taught to separate you from your authority, your self-authority, the empire of the world, and particularly the Moroccan Empire in which you're standing right now. Now, how did the Moors become known as Africans? We are not Africans, and we're not African Americans. Scipio Africanus, a Roman general, was fighting the Barker Bay family, which you know as Hannibal, Hasdrubal, etc. When they defeated him, he poisoned himself rather than give up, by the way. Anyway, when they defeated them, he put his name on the northwest coast of Kibalan, or Tameri. Tameri, that's called Africa today. Do you understand? Not the continent. Near Tunis, Algiers, what you call Morocco, the kingdom. You understand? Kingdom is subordinate to empire. That area, just that part, was called Africanus, after Scipio, the god general. All right? Who's given the honor for defeating the great Moors. They weren't totally defeated. That was that area. All right? Now you got to also look at these. I'm giving you different points of history so that you can look into them and see yourself and see the motives of how you got where you are. Because this is important in order for any suits that you may place in any court of law in the world and in this United States, so it can be totally valid. All right? So these Moors became known as Africans, and a lot of Moors even today thinking that they're going back to their bloodline, talking about we're Africans. Well, they're not Africans. They're Moors. All right? Is that clear? The word Africa comes from Scipio Africanus, the Roman general who the Moors, who capitulated, made him their god. All right? So in order to honor their god, they called themselves after their god Africans. Just like the Moors in the modern time honor their god and give him the title that belonged originally to us, white man. Call him the great white father and call him God, and they put his name on their children as a curse and a title of possession, Smith, Jones, Johnson, and Whoopi Goldberg. Do you understand? Because he's their God. They will not buy, they will not sell, they will not move, they will not breathe unless they pay their God first, and they get angry at you if you bring it to them just like that. So you got to allow them their dignity so they don't burn your house down. That's the mentality of a Negro, a nigger, a colored person. A being that's outside of the human family that commands dignity. And the world sees us that way until we honor our mothers and fathers who were Moabites, Moors. We don't see ourselves that way because of our arrogance and our self-righteousness. However, at law, you have no standing. So these are keys that are important to understand when you play suits. Because if you play suit in a fraudulent position, the suit really has no jurisdiction, no power in the jurisdiction, because it's subordinate to one who owns it. It, not you, it. Because Negro, black, and colored was coined by the European sons in order to distinguish human chattel property from the human family who had national names like every other civilized being. Then what happened, we adopted these things and then try to impose it on the civilized world, get rejected, and accuse them of prejudice. So the real deal is that we're both in violation of law. And so we have to get out of the culture of playing victim, and he has to get out of the culture of his corrupt superiority when he's a fraud and a substitute in both law and government. But we have both of us have fallen in love with the lie. You understand? So now what we have to do is begin to systematically bring the correct information so that when, as Moors become conscious and they get repressed by the corporations, which is substituting as the government, that they have some redress, some method of redress, even though ultimately the fall will come from their own corruption. Meanwhile, it's sort of like you got to learn to live within the contracts. And so these are things that we're talking about. So keep these things in mind, because it's very important when it comes to the point of protecting your Moorish birthright, if you're forced to sue, that you be in your proper person, which is also why Drew Ali reminded the Moors before this thing even came, when this thing fell all apart, he says, if you don't do anything else, declare your nationality, be yourselves. Of course, you all know, those of you who know law, know that being yourself in law is in propria persona sui juris. All right? So when you see that, you know that that's being yourself. The other thing that you'll notice that in the corporate and colorable courts, that very often if you file a suit, etc., they'll put in there on it pro se, if you're dealing with it yourself. And then you might see the magistrate say to you that the pro se and the impropriate persona is the same thing. It's a lie. Impropriate persona sui juris is your own proper person. And in truth, you only have standing at law when you're in your proper person. These are reasons that Drew Ali set those things up, because he knew it was coming. But he also knew we was hard-headed. And he also knew we wasn't going to listen, that we were going to play with the emotions and go start following people who were telling you this was religion when it's the return of your birthright. And you'd be confused because we're dedicated people means that we're always looking for something to worship. Oh, there's a mic. So I'm converting from this camera, and next week, now the mic is God. Has no ears to hear, no heart to sympathize, no reasoning power. And then when it fails, now it's the flag. And this is what we've done. This is what dedication means. You understand? So people have the wrong concept of Allah, of Yeshua, the prophets, Jesus. All of their concepts are totally wrong. These were liberators. They were social reformers. They dealt with civilization law and principles of what? Isonomy. And that principle is ancient. And that principle is symbolized by a compass and a square. And that symbolized Moore's law. And it's ancient, it's not modern, even though some organizations may use it and claim it's yours. And isonomy means equal rights and equal justice in the society. The United States Republic, North America, was founded on the principle of isonomy. And every European son that's presented to you in history as a main key in the foundation of this government was 3rd, 33rd, 360-degree free Moorish master masons in secret. Do you understand that? That goes with Jefferson, Adams, Washington, Franklin, etc., etc., etc. And they got a fez too. You understand? The reason the United States Republic North America was established, again, coming back where I started, was to stop the series of wars between the Romans and the Moors. Do you understand that? They have you thinking that this republic was started because of some religious freedom from England. Well, I'll tell you that the Danes of England were Moors. All right? And the monarchy that they talked about is simply the constitutional governing power being vested in sultans, etc., or in single person. It is the most correct form of government, except if it gets corrupt, it goes absolutely opposite. That monarchy form of government was transferred on what you call the people scale for the United States of America. Most people don't know that the three branches of government is really the monarchy spread out. The government set in the form of recognizing the birthright of the people. And is based in divine and cosmological law. And the deal with it is, and a lot of people are not aware of this, even people in government, yeah, they are, because they're told that, truthfully. Because they learned it in their secret societies. But as far as the masses are concerned, is that because it is based in divine law, the consequence of violating the Constitution, the retort, the recompense, the revenge is based in nature, not in you. So if they violate the law, you violate the law, Constitution law, it's already set in the atmosphere. So you can play games all you want to. That's what makes the United States really so unique, not what they've been telling you. Because this government was set up on the principle of isonomy. And that is divine law. And the keys to it is set up also in the Declaration of Independence. Nature's God and nature's law. And don't you think it's not. But the warning act was put out with Noble Drew Ali that if these rules, if these principles were not enforced, that the worst was yet to come. I'm going to read from the latest paper, because one of the things I did in the latest paper, you all have the latest paper? The Prophet Noble Drew Ali? Morris Divine National Movement, Part 1. All right, we're going to read the centerfold. And I want you to recognize what's in here, then analyze it. and deal with what you're dealing with today. And then we're going to break it down and talk about some things. Then later we're going to talk about how to sue. Moorish leaders, historical, divine warning for the nations. Nations is plural. That's centerfold. The citizens of all national governments, according to their national constitution, are all of one family bearing one free national name. Those who fail to recognize the free national name of their constitutional government are classed as undesirables and are subject to all inferior names and abuses and mistreatments that the citizens care to bestow upon them. And it is a sin for any group of people to violate the national constitutional laws of a free national government and cling to the names and the principles that delude to slavery. I, the prophet, was prepared by the great God Allah to warn my people to repent from their sinful ways and go back to that state of mind of their forefathers' divine and national principles, that they will be law-abiders and receive their divine rights as citizens according to the free national constitution that was prepared for all free national beings. They are to claim their own free national name and religion. There is but one issue for them to be recognized by this government and of the earth, and it comes only through the connection of the Moorish divine national movement, which is incorporated in this government and recognized by all other nations of the world. And through it they and their children can receive their divine rights unmolested by other citizens, that they can cast a free national ballot at the polls under the free national constitution of the state's government and not under a granted privilege as has been the existing condition for many generations. You who doubt whether I, the prophet, and my principles are right for the redemption of my people, go to those who know law in the city hall and among the officials in your government, and ask them under an intelligent tone, and they will be glad to render you a favorable reply, for they are glad to see me bring you out of darkness into light. Money doesn't make the man. It is free national standards and power that make the man and a nation. The wealth of all national governments, gold and silver and commerce, belong to the citizens alone. And without your national citizenship by name and principles, you have no true wealth. And I am hereby calling on all true citizens that stand for a national free government and the enforcement of the Constitution to help me in my great missionary work, because I need all support from all true American citizens of the United States of America. Help me to save my people who have fallen from the constitutional laws of government. I am depending on your support to get them back to the constitutional fold again, that they will learn to love instead of hate, and will live according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, supporting our free national constitution of the United States of America. I love my people and have desire for their unity and mind back to their own national and divine standard, because day by day they have been violating the national and constitutional laws of their government by claiming names and principles that are unconstitutional. If Italians, Greeks, English, Chinese, Japanese, Turks, and Arabians are forced to proclaim their free national name and religion before the constitutional government of the United States of America, it is no more than right that the laws should be enforced upon all other American citizens alike. In all other governments, when a man is born and raised there and asks for his national descent name, and if he fails to give it, he is misused, imprisoned, or exiled. Any group of people that fail to answer up to the constitutional standards of law by name and principles, because to be a citizen of any government you must claim your national descent name, because they place their trust upon issues and names formed by their forefathers. The word Negro deludes in the Latin language to the word nigger, the same as the word color deludes to anything that is painted, varnished, and dyed. And every nation must bear a national descent name of their forefathers, because honoring thy mothers and thy fathers, your days will be lengthened upon the earth. These names have never been recognized by any true American citizens of this day. Through your national name, you are known and recognized by all nations of the earth, and are recognized by said national government in which they live. The 14th and 15th Amendment brought the North and South in unit, placing the Southerners who were at that time without power with the constitutional body of power. And at that time, 1865, the free national constitutional law that was enforced since 1774 declared all men equal and free. And if all men are declared by the free national constitution to be free and equal, since that constitution has never been changed, there is no need for the application of the 14th and 15th Amendments for the salvation of our people and citizens. So there is but one supreme issue for my people to use to redeem that which was lost, and that is through the above statements. Then the lion and the lamb can lie down together in yonder hills, and neither will be harmed, because love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice will be reigning in this land. In those days, the United States will be one of the greatest civilized and prosperous governments of the world. But if the above principles are not carried out by the citizens and my people in this government, the worst is yet to come. Because the great God of the universe is not pleased with the works that are being performed in North America by my people, and this great sin must be removed from the land to save it from enormous earthquakes, diseases, etc. And I, the prophet, do hereby believe that the administration of the government being more wisely prepared by more genius citizens that believe in their free national constitution and laws, and through the help of such classes of citizens, I, the prophet, truly believe my people will find the true and divine way of their forefathers and learn to stop serving carnal customs and merely ideas of men that have never done them any good but have always harmed them. So I, the prophet, am hereby calling aloud with a divine plea to all true American citizens to help me to remove this great sin which has been committed and is being practiced by my people in the United States of America, because they know it is not the true and divine way, and without understanding they have fallen from the true light into utter darkness of sin, and there is not a nation on earth today that will recognize them socially, religiously, politically, or economically, etc., in their present condition of their endeavorment in which they themselves try to force upon a civilized world. They will not refrain from their sinful ways of action, and their deeds have brought Jim Crowism, segregation, and everything that brings harm to human beings on earth. And they fought the Southerner for all these great misuses. But I've traveled in the South and have examined conditions there, and it is the works of my people continuously practicing the things which bring dishonor, disgrace, and disrespect to any nation that lives the life. And I am hereby calling on all true American citizens for moral support and finance to help me in my great missionary work to bring my people out of darkness into marvelous light from the prophet. Now, you know, this was decades ago. This was even before they suspended the Constitution. So you got to look at the timeline. Now, a lot of misery that you're going to be facing, and you will. I'm also going to give you a little bit of astrological, mathematical prophecy. Third World War is already on. It started roughly around 1969, officially. In initiating this Third World War is how you're going to be freed, because they have no intentions. Truthfully, they're incorrigible. They have no intentions of enforcing the Constitution. Why? They're criminals. Your concepts of dealing with government officials is wrong. They're not your government. The United States has not had a legitimate government since Actually, 1914.
Who's that?
Huh?
Who's that? What is the government?
That's when Wilson, he's a knight. What you call President Wilson. They made deals, and what they did, they were in the process of stealing your gold and your silver. Now, do you know what separations of powers is? When our forefathers set up this Constitution in order to stop these wars between the Moors and the Roman nations and set up the United States uniquely as a symbol for the rest of the world, as a pattern to go back to the ancient laws and principles of civilization which were founded by the Moors, which were violated, which is why you're having these wars in the first place. Do you know the principles or the fundamental principles upon which the separation of powers is set up. The floor is open. You can throw it. Anyone know? You know the reason? Which branch of government was given the delegated authority, a DOAO, delegation of authority order, by Constitution law to coin the money? Congress?
I was just going to answer that question.
Go ahead, answer it.
Church and state.
Congress.
Separation of...
The Congress. The Congress. Now, the Congress is the only body that has the authority to coin the money for the United States Republic. Federal Reserve System established between 1913 and 1916. Is that in the Constitution? Is that a part of your government? Why do people think it is? Because they don't know, they haven't studied. So now they're enslaved to the Knights Templar, veiled also in Masonry, servants to the King of England, taking care of their Negro property that's carrying their name, Smith, Jones, and Johnson, and whoever you all calling yourself this year. If you institute any suit in their name, the court automatically has jurisdiction because the judge is a member of the Bar Association of England, that has branches here in North America. His first obligation is to the courts, which are colorable for colored people and color of law. Now, in case you didn't know what that is, colored means anything painted, varnished, dyed, anything fake, hiding something, fraud, etc. That's also why they tagged Moors who had fell colored people also, because it means that we're faking it, acting like we're human beings because we dishonor our mothers and fathers willingly, knowingly. So that makes them legally colored people. That's not an issue of complexion. That's a legal and lawful term that describes a condition of a people from a jurisprudence perspective. So as soon as you declare out your mouth that you're called a person, automatically the Christian Black Codes of 1724 come into effect because you just agreed to it. Because they coined that for people who dishonor their mothers and their fathers. Because if you don't honor your mothers and fathers, don't worry, your days ain't going to be long on this planet. And they own you because you've been transacting business in their names, and you know it. Even your babies knew it. And you thought it wasn't important. Well, it is. Because when you did that, you gave up your birthright willingly. That's a contract. You just made a pact with them. And it's enforceable all over the world. So Negroes, blacks, and colored people, which are its, they're not human beings, have no rights before any human being on the planet. Not because they don't like you, because you agreed to that by claiming to be something that you are not. What you need to know that it had legal and lawful implications, and this is what they didn't tell you. They just told you it was an opinion, you know, people feel about you and all that kind of crap, and you believed them and gave up your birthright. That's what the so-called Negro problem actually is, from a legal and jurisprudence point of view. Before you can have standing at law, the lack of it is called no judicio standi, which means you have no standing at law. In order to change that, you must be in your proper person, which is why Drew Ali said, be yourselves. But then there's so much information that had to be imparted to you before you could understand what that statement really meant. So he set up Old Canaanite Temple, Moorish Holy Temple of Science, but these were veiled because the Roman sons was not going to let this happen. Just like Wilson said, he told the prophet, he said, you give these niggers back Islam, that's like putting a pair of pants on a horse, and laughed at him. He said, however, I'll back you up, because that's his obligation. After all, he's a Mason. They know your history. They know their obligation to that Constitution, but they know, for the most part, because we're so dedicated that we didn't want it. That's why he was speaking with such confidence. You understand? In other words, you can come amongst us and sell us a God every two days. We'll build churches, mosques, synagogues, gold them down, jewels in the wall, have some guy walk in here with suitcases, you understand, talk about he's government and this and everything, and walk away with packs of money, and you think you've been blessed. The only reason why you're spiritual or you're lighter because your pockets is lighter. And that's And everybody in the world knows that about us. You understand? Every civilized being on the planet, when they leave their mother, which is the nation, which is natal, that navel, that's your only birthmark. When they leave their mother, they're taught the truth about their natal responsibilities, their relationship to the world. And you have an obligation when you go out into the world to honor your mothers and your fathers. So you'll never see a Chinese, Japanese, Korean, any of the Asiatic brothers from the upper continent, Asia, come telling you they're talking about some light-skinned yellow rights. Why do they not do that? Because they're civilized human beings. They're part of the human family. They honor their mothers and fathers. They're not going to come here talking about, well, I'm going to the mall, get me a light-skinned black leather coat. And they know that's fiction. But little boys and girls, even though they got big bodies, think that that's real. Think that the human family is crayons. And if you try to tell them different, they think you're trying to sell them some kind of religion. Why do they think like that? Because the sorcerers have done a good job.